Greetings, detectives. Mrs. McKay here, and it's time to work on our third clue for Case 8. This is Learning Target Clue 8-3, and we can go ahead and get started by filling in our learning target, which says, I can determine which central measure of tendency to use when interpreting data. Now, let's think about what those words mean. Central measure of tendency. What does central mean? If something is central, it means it's in the center, right? Measure is how we measure something. It's how we count or determine an amount. And so if we want to know the central measure, it means the center of some data. And when it says of tendency, that means how is it tending to be? How is it leaning? What's it leaning towards? What is the most appropriate central measure or center of the data? So we have different ways that we measure that, how we determine that central measure of tendency, and those three things are things that you've learned before. They're called mean, median, and mode. Okay, so let's do a quick review of mean. Mean just means the average. So that means we take the sum of all the terms and divide by the number of terms, right? So we take the sum of the terms and then we divide it by how many terms we have, all right? The median just means the middle. It's the middle number. So we line them up and find the middle, okay? We line up all the data in order, the lowest to the largest, the smallest to the largest. We include every single occurrence of that value, every single occurrence of the value. So if you have two 10s, you put 10 in twice. You line them all up, and then you kind of start at either end, and you just keep going in until you find the very middle. All right? Mode means the most. Which data value or which value occurs the most. That's the mode. Okay? So mean, median, and mode. You should already know how to find those, but that was just a quick review just to kind of refresh your memory. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to decide which is the best measure. Which is the best measure of that center? Okay? Should we use the mean? Should we use the median? Should we use the mode? Which is the best center? So let's start by looking at this data that I have right here. I've got a line plot that has 10 to 20. My range is 10 to 20. And I have points or X's for each occurrence of it. So I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 10s and 5 11s, 3 12s, 3 14s, 2 16s, 1 17, a 19, and a 20. And I'd like you to go ahead and find the mean of this data. So that means you're going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to take 6, and you're going to multiply it by 10 because you're going to add 10 6 times. You're going to add to that 5 times 11. You're going to add to that 3 times 12. You don't have any 13s, but you'll add 3 times 14 and 2 times 16 plus 17 plus 19 plus 20. So get out your calculator and see if you can figure out how much this is. We'll get the sum, and then we'll have to divide it. But let's find the sum first. came up with 281. I multiplied 6 times 10 and got 60. 5 times 11 gives me 55. 3 times 12 is 36. 3 times 14 is 42. 2 times 16 is 32. And then I had a 17, a 19, and a 20. And I added all of those numbers up, and I came up with 281. So that's the sum of all of my terms. But now I have to divide it by how many terms I have. So I have 6 here, and 5 here, and 3 there, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1. So 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 3 is 14, plus 3 is 17, plus 2 is 19, 20, 21, 22. I have 22 terms. Now I can count them as well. I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So I'm going to take 281 and divide by 22. You do the same thing and tell me what you come up with. With 12.77 when I divided that using my calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 12.77, and I'm going to write 12.77 there. So one measure to find the center of this data, as we look at it, is to say that it's about 12.77. All right? That's using the mean. Now, if we wanted to use the median, what we would need to do is we would need to start by writing all of our numbers out. So I'm going to change my color so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to start, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. So I'm going to write 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one more. Okay? And then I have 5 11s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 3 12s. 1, 2, 3. And then I have no 13s, but I have 3 14s. 1, 2, 3. And I have 2 16s. 16 and 16. 17, 19, and 20. And I have to find the middle. All right? So this is how I do it. I go 1, 1, 2, 2. I basically am going in until I get to the very middle. You can also count them, and you'll see that when I cross them all off and I go all the way in, I don't have one left over. So to find the median, when I have an even number like that, I have to, it's between 11 and 12, I have to find the mean of 11 and 12. So when I add 11 and 12 together, the midway point is 11.5. Okay? So my median is 11.5. And then my mode is the one that I have the most of, and you can see that the mode in this situation is 10. All right? So now the question is, which is the better measure? Which one gives me the best measurement of the center of this data? Which do you think it is? Do you think it's the mean, the median, or the mode? As you're looking at your numbers, which one do you think is a better middle ground, kind of the middle of the data? Well, I think it's probably 11.5. It feels a little, we're at a range of 10 to 20, right? And so it's going to be more than 10, or it's going to be more than, it's not going to be halfway between 10 and 20. It's not going to be at 15 because there's more on the lower end than there is on the, so there's more over here than there is over here. So it can't be directly in the middle. But at the same time, most of the numbers are over here between 10 and 14. And so kind of in between 10 and 14 would be sort of like 12-ish or so. But then you've got these extra numbers over here. So I think 11.5 is a better measure of the middle. But you might disagree, and you can explain why you think it's different. Often what we find is that if we have skewed data, which you can see that this is skewed, it comes down, there's a tail, it's skewed right, there's a tail to the right, that these larger numbers, 19 and 20, make the median be bigger than it normally would because they're adding to the total. But really most of our numbers are in the 10s, 11s, and 12s. That's where most of our numbers are. So sometimes when you have a skewed data, it's better to just line them all up and find the median, because that's a closer measure of what the middle is. Okay? Now let's do this next one. Let's go ahead and do the this symmetrical data, and let's figure that one out. So why don't you take a minute and figure out what the mean is. Figure out what the mean is. Okay, so I went ahead and added up all my numbers and divided by 37, which was the total number of terms, and I got 13.6. That's not where I wanted to be. So I wrote 13.66. It was actually actually it should be 13.68, sorry, because it was 13.675, and so we'll round this to an 8, 13.68. Now, go ahead and find the median. Take all these numbers, line them up. Hopefully you found somewhere to do it on your paper. Oh, I can do it on mine right there. So I'm going to write mine across here and figure out what the median is, and you do the same thing. Okay, so I just figured out my median, and I found out that it was 14 because I had 37, and so that meant there were 18 on this side and 18 on this side, and the middle number was the 19th number, which makes that 14. So let me go ahead and write 14 right here. And then my mode is also 14, isn't it? Okay, so the nice thing about symmetric distributions is that often the mean, the median, and the mode are all very, very close to each other. Notice how the mean is 13.68, which is right about here, right? And the median is 14, and so is the mode. So all three are very close to each other. So in this situation, when you have a symmetric distribution, you can really use any of them. Well, not any, because if it's a bell curve, you can use any of them. But it's easiest probably to use the mean, because then you don't have to line up all the numbers and count across. You just add them up and divide. So using the mean is usually your best bet when you have a symmetric one. Now, we've got some more work to do, but I want to show you a couple things. So I'm going to do a part 2 on this because I want to show you a cool way that you can use Desmos to figure out your mean and median. And we'll do that by going back to that original problem that we did with all of the cereal and the amounts of sugar. So before you start the next video, take a minute and go ahead and create a dot plot of this cereal again right here on this line. Okay? And then I'll talk to you in the next video.